All right, everybody, we are back again for another episode of The Coach's Compass. Don't know what episode it is because we just continue to roll, continue to bring on guests from all across the world, and just continue to elaborate on the important things of training, coaching, and everything that comes into being a top athlete. But it's your boy, Coach Coop, reporting all the way live from the United States of America. And our special guest today, Dr. Kruse, a neurosurgeon, author, and investor looking at quantum level to explain how nature works in biology. So if you guys haven't had the opportunity to check out Dr. Kruse, he's one of those doctors that has been across this whole spectrum of things, especially working with athletes, that is super important for us because I watched a lot of your episodes on just like barefoot grounding, getting out into the light and training. Could you like elaborate more on, what do you have seen that have made good coaches good?
Well, we got to start with the basics first. Just so everybody in the audience, because this is probably an audience that doesn't know who the hell I am. I'm a board certified neurosurgeon, and I started doing some work with NFL teams probably 20 years ago. Actually, I'm lying to you. It's 25 now. And I brought some unusual ideas to them. And then around 2009, I started to take care of some NHL players' wives, and they got better. And then they talked to their husbands. And long story short, I wound up talking to their trainers. The next year, after the team adopted all this stuff, they won the Stanley Cup. Same time, coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers had an issue, heard about what I did with the Blackhawks, got everybody tested in Pittsburgh, and found out that basically the entire team was vitamin D deficient. And we fixed that problem, and they won the Super Bowl the next year against Larry Fitzgerald and Kurt Warner. If you remember that Super Bowl with Santonio Holmes catching the ball in the corner of the end zone. And it's kind of morphed. I don't really spend a lot of time talking to trainers or athletes unless you are my personal patient. So I have a lot of professional athletes that, deal with me on a one-to-one basis. Why? Because the things that I teach people, you will never hear from a centralized coach. You'll never hear it from anybody in the NFL because what they're giving you is standard boilerplate. What I'm doing, I teach you the science of why that tree behind me is growing and why you need to adapt some of that stuff in you to become an optimal performer. And generally, how I start is I tell an athlete, I said, if you want to be a supreme high performance athlete, you need to understand something about the Sherpas. Most of them look at me like I'm crazy. They're like, what's a Sherpa? I said, these are small little people that live on the top of the Himalayan mountains that are tan, it's cold, and they're able to go up on the mountain, carry all the gear for Europeans who can't, up to 20, 25, 28,000 feet. And when the Europeans get sick and they start getting hypoxic and they can't breathe and the oxygen no longer works, the Sherpas who have no oxygen pick the European up, put the European on the back with all the equipment and carry him down. I said, that is a supreme athlete. I said, so when you can do that, then you'll be better at the NBA. Then you'll be better in the NFL. Then you'll be better in the NHL. There's gears to the training regimen that you haven't heard about yet. And each sport, each professional sport really focuses the things that I call boilerplate on those athletes, okay? For example, in the NFL, since you played in the NFL, you'll understand this. The way we train a cornerback versus, say, an offensive lineman, radically different, right? Those guys are going to weigh 300 to 350 pounds. Cornerback, no, he needs to have change of direction skills. So the training regimen is different there. Even though they're both football players, the skill set and what they need to do is different. Same thing is true. An NBA player is going to be different than an NFL player, or a baseball player is going to be different than anyone else. So what's the basics for all elite athletes? It starts with how we transform energy in the body. Most of you probably have heard of a thing called the mitochondria. I don't expect you to know anything more than knowing that you heard that word, but all you need to know about a mitochondria is that it takes environmental energy and transforms it into chemical, biologic energy in you. You guys use that energy to perform. So what is the goal of my brand of science? It's called decentralized medicine. It is optimizing the efficiency of your mitochondrial engines. Okay? So how do I want you to think about this? I want you to think about the guys in Italy that make Ferraris. When a Ferrari comes off the line, it goes 225 miles per hour no matter what you put in it. Doesn't matter if you put shit on a shingle in the car, it's going to go that fast. But if you keep putting shit on the shingle in that car, it stops going 225 miles an hour, and then you have to bring it to the mechanic. The mechanic cleans all the gunk out, and then it can go 225 miles an hour, and then hopefully you start putting the right gas in it, okay? Same thing is true in an athlete. Many people are shocked to hear the story of Usain Bolt. When Bob Costas interviewed him after he won 5 gold medals, they asked him about his training regimen. He said, basically, I wore shorts, nothing else, ran on the top of volcanoes at the 20th latitude, and ate chicken McNuggets. And everybody was like, bro, are you serious? And he was dead serious. He was able to win 5 gold medals doing that. And the story, the reason I start this with a lot of my athletes, I'm going to tell you, you can eat like shit as long as your engines are in really good shape. But then, of course, most of them ask me, well, Doc, how do we get the engines in good shape? And I said, well, that's where you got to learn a little bit of science. And there's the mechanic in you has 2 funky names. It's called autophagy and apoptosis. And what do those 2 mechanics do? One rebuilds the engine. The other one recycles the engine. And what controls those 2 mechanics? The sun. And it turns out UV light from the sun controls one of those mechanics. Infrared light from the sun controls the other mechanic. So the key is, if you want to be an optimal athlete, you have to get both purple and red light from your environment a lot. So, for example, I told you that Usain Bolt took all his clothes off, was basically in his skivvies, and he ran on volcanoes at the 20th latitude. Well, what do you need to know about that? What does that mean in English? It means he's in tropical environment, so the sun is strong, and then he's running on volcanoes. Volcanoes mean he's at altitude. But when you go higher up, you get more UV light. Now, the cool thing is, you may not know this, but red light is the most common part of light in the sun. It makes up about 43% of sunlight. UV light only makes about 3 or 4%. So anything you can do to get more of that light is really important, because it allows you to make sure when you do things wrong, like say when you go out with your buddies and you smoke cigars, drink too much tequila, and eat Taco Bell at 4:00 in the morning, that you'll be able to go out and maybe beat the Titans if, you're playing for the Jags. But if you do too much of that too long, that your optimal performance window is going to be really short. It's not going to be, a long career like it was, like, say, for Adrian Peterson, is able to do things that most other people can't do. Or, for example, Tom Brady. Tom Brady uses a lot of the stuff that I do. So that's why he was able to go from a guy, when you look at his body when he got drafted in 99 at pick 199, and you look at where he was when he retired at 47 years old, he looks radically different. But he looks radically different because the things that he did were also radically different. A lot of things he believed was around food. What I'm going to teach you, food doesn't matter as much as you think. Why? Because of the wiring diagram of what's going on in your mitochondria. And that's the reason I started this story with you about Usain Bolt, okay? Because he highlights that food isn't as important as light. When you get light right, you can actually get food wrong. But obviously what your guys are interested in is getting light right and getting food right so that you become optimal, okay? So there's a guy out there, his name is Western A. Price. He's a dentist. He wrote a book called Diseases of Western Civilization. And it's probably good for you guys. You don't have to read the book. What I'd like you to do is get a copy sometime, especially if you're an athlete, and look at the pictures of the people that he took in there. These are people that lived between like 1890 and 1930. And what you'll notice is all these dudes look like they worked out in a Gold's Gym, except Gold's Gym wasn't invented at that time. Okay? Every single one of these people lived outside, yet they look like freaking warriors. They look like, Michelangelo's David statue. So the idea that you think you have to go to the gym to look like that needs to kind of go by the wayside, because it's not true. In fact, if you use a gym to do the things that you have to do for your specific sport, the first thing I want you to do to tell your trainer, like, you don't ask their opinion about this. You tell them, I'm only coming to your gym if the windows open up or the sun comes in. The thing that you have to refuse to do is you can't work out under man-made light. That means blue light, LED light, incandescent light, fluorescent light. The reason why, remember we talked about before that we said if we want to be a good athlete, we have to have good engines and good food. You're going to be shocked when I tell you this. When you operate your training program under blue light, do you know what it does physiologically? Raises your blood glucose and your insulin level. So it's like you're eating cheesecake the whole time you're working out without putting any food in your mouth. You think that's good for your engines? No, that's like putting Aunt Jemima in your carburetor and your Ferrari. You going to do well? No, you're not. But the thing is, your trainers that run your program in there, they don't even know that basic thing. But guess what? That's been in the literature literally for 25 years. But it's convenient for the gym owner or the trainer that brings you to that gym. So you as the performance athlete, the single number one thing you need to do is take a look at where I am right now. This is my house. Notice that, and I'll show this to you. My house has no walls at all. The guys that I do professional training with, the athletes, most of them wind up selling their houses when they start using my stuff. Why? Because they begin to realize it's a huge, big deal. And the crazy thing is, I told this young man before we started the podcast, I just found out about an athlete that's actually in Paris getting ready to win a gold medal in wrestling. I didn't know anything about him, but he's been using all my stuff and talking about it on wrestling podcasts. So now those trainers are reaching out to me and go, bro, tell me about this. And I said to them the same thing I'm going to tell you. I said, do you remember how long wrestling has been, a sport, a professional sport? It goes all the way back to the Greeks and the Romans. I said, what do you know about the Greeks and the Romans? Did they have gyms inside or did they wrestle outside? Did they wear shoes? No, they did it on bare feet on the ground. And they did it outside in coliseums. And I said, were those guys huge like the guys are now? No, they didn't have to be, but they all looked like they were working out in the gym. I said, what if I was to tell you that sunlight builds your muscle? How does it do it? It actually increases dopamine and melatonin levels so that you sculpt your muscles to be the right fiber type for the sport that you're in. How do you like that? But guess what? Do you think you get that effect from nature if you're doing it in a blue lit gym that's got artificial light? The answer is no. So try to make this simple for an athlete to understand. See the trees behind me? Those are citrus trees. So if they're going to make an orange, do you think I can make an orange if I put a tarp over it? Well, guess what? Why do you think you can when you're in there with a tarp over you while you're working out? You understand why Usain Bolt ran in his skivvies on a volcano? He actually got the message, and he got that message from a guy like me, because several of the people that trained told him this. Okay? When Adrian Peterson tore his ACL, okay? You remember that? You're a football guy.
Yeah.
Next year, he came back, right? On short notice, 8 months, and he ran for 2,000 yards. Guess what he was doing in Texas? Running barefoot out in the sun. Want to take a guess where he got that information? Guess what? In other words, you can do things that you can't do. I'll take it even further back. Well, you were probably a young boy when this happened. Jerry Rice tore his ACL and came back almost in the same season. And everybody thought it was crazy. How about the latest one? Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles, right? The game one and almost came back, but the Jets sucked so bad they said, no, we ain't doing that. Guess what? Aaron Rodgers knew too. He was out on the beach in California running with his clothes off in Malibu. People know things that you don't know. So you're like, oh, no, these guys are just special because they got genetics. That's what all y'all taught from the idiots that are training you. Turns out that's not true. Genes aren't as important as you've been led to believe. Turns out the light and dark cycle that you live under is really important. In fact, that's actually what tells the genes what to do. That's what gets those engines fired up. So if you want to keep your Ferrari engine for as long as you possibly can at the elite level in the sport that you are, then guess what you need to do? You need to get skin in the game. You need to learn why purple light and red light is really important for controlling those two programs. And you're going to find out that I'm probably more okay with you eating Taco Bell once in a while than I am with you going out with your buddies at 8 o'clock at night looking for women drinking liquor till 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to tell you, I think the Taco Bell is a better choice than you staying out late at night. And it's certainly a better choice the next day when you come in and say, for example, I'm using this for you. The Jags handed you a playbook on iPad. You're like, bro, can I have the old, paper sheet? All my guys ask for the loose leaf book. They're like, I don't want to do that. And if you go watch film, you're going to do it in a room that actually has light tubes in it that brings the sunlight in. There's now NFL teams that actually do that. The ones that finish at the bottom of the league, they're all still in a dark room watching film. But guess what? My guys know a little bit different. They understand in order to be supreme that you have to have, when the sun is out, you need to be in it. Okay? And that's the key. Your training regimen, I don't care what it is. I actually don't even care what y'all do. That's going to be the shocking thing to you. I'm okay with you listening to the trainer to do that. I'm just telling you that the environment that you do it in, you do not negotiate with the trainer. You say, this is how we're doing it, and that's better. I'm going to tell you, guys that work out in the sun will always be better athletes than people who don't. You might be good in the beginning of your career just from your natural ability, but since you're a football guy, I can hit you with this one too, because I know you know this. Back in the day, Reggie White, when he was playing football, was known as being country strong. Like, he never worked out. Nobody ever made him work out because he literally would pick up 330-pound offensive tackles and throw them into the quarterback.
Yep.
Well, what you may not know about Reggie White, where he grew up in the Deep South, and he was always out in the sun working in fields. The sad part of Reggie's story is when he migrated up to Green Bay, wound up getting really bad sleep apnea and died at 38 years old. And yet, he was an elite athlete. So you got to ask yourself the question, was there something that he did in his life that ended his life? And can you look like a physical freak and perform like a physical freak and still die? The answer is yes. In fact, I would tell you there's a myriad of examples as athletes. Junior Seau, Dave Duerson, trying to think of the recent ones. And not in football, because I know you're a football guy. Think about like the endurance athletes, Greta Waitz, who won the New York Marathon, I think 4 or 5 times. Or how about Martina Navratilova? They are shells of their former selves. I'll give you another one. Back from my time, pitchers like Nolan Ryan, Tom Seaver, they would throw 300 innings a year, have over 300 strikeouts. Today, you can't even get a major league pitcher to pitch 5 innings without them, needing Tommy John surgery or something else. Guess why? Because the way we now live our life isn't the way we used to live our life. Technology has brought us inside when we're supposed to be outside. And you guys, especially young guys, this is your life, bro. Mm-hmm. Screens. And what do screens emit? They emit that blue light. So what does that mean? You got glucose and insulin teeming through you even when you ain't eating it and you don't know it. And that's the problem. And that means technically any elite athlete, if they're working out inside, you may be looking good on the outside, but you're running on freaking chicken McNuggets constantly. And you don't get it. And you keep saying, why is it that I can't do this? And, I've had people say to me, how can Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, white boys seemingly doing everything wrong because they don't look like we look, and they're kicking ass and taking names until they're 42, 43. Maybe they know something you don't know. And that's what this podcast really is about. You need to understand, to optimize human performance, there's a 3-legged stool you need to learn about: light, water, and magnetism. And I already told you a little bit of the story of the magnetism with Usain Bolt. Why did he run on volcanoes? Volcanoes have huge magnetic flux because it's got lava that's doing this shit on the bottom. And guess what? That creates free electrons. You want to know something that's funny about our feet that ties back to your NFL career and the wrestlers that I told you about? Because I want you to tell people what it was like to be in a training camp. Did you ever have your bare feet on the ground when you're in Jags camp?
No.
Right? You always wear Nikes or Adidas taped up, right?
Yep.
Well, guess what? When the way grounding works, the sun is a cathode ray, the planets are anodes. Again, this is all simple chemistry. When light hits an anode, it creates free electrons. You know what separates us from our nearest relatives, the chimps and the gorillas? Don't you wear socks on your feet? Right? Because the feet sweat, right? Do you know that chimps and gorillas don't have sweat glands on their feet or their hands? But you do. You know why? They climb up in trees. You're designed to walk on the tectonic plates. So you're getting free electrons just by being outside. Isn't that what I told you the ancient wrestlers? Did they wear anything on their feet? No. But guess what? When you're in the Jags camp, you did. So let's hard pass this because you've been around 2015 and now. What's the number one injury in the NFL? Achilles and ACLs, right?
Yeah.
Is that in your lower extremities? You think
Yes.
wearing the wrong shoes might have something to do with it? Remember how the NFL Players Association are always talking about, hey, we don't like these fake fields? Might they be right? If you're working on a fake field, can you ground? The answer is no, because guess what? It's like putting a tarp over the orange tree, right? How are you going to get those free electrons in your body? You can't. See? I can see your own face when I'm talking to you. You're going, bro, I never even thought about this.
Yeah, not at all.
Right. So, and I will tell you, as a big offensive lineman, they tend not to get those lower extremity injuries. But you as a safety or a cornerback, bro, what I'm telling you right now, this is the truth. Because this is the injuries you guys get. Right? And when you begin to see, okay, I need to start doing my training different. I would have told you as a former NFL safety, I want you down here in El Salvador on a black sand beach next to a volcano doing most of your off-season training. And you know, right now is before camp. Camp hasn't started for NFL teams. So for you, I want you 6 weeks down here so that when you go through the dog days of camp, you're not going to tear an ACL. You're not going to get a hamstring pull. I used to tell a story when I was doing work for the NFL teams. It was the year, because this is right probably when you were in the camp. Remember when Lattimore came out, that draft? He was a cornerback for the Saints. He missed a whole year of college because he kept having a hamstring tears. And at the same draft, if I'm not mistaken, Kevin White also went high. I think he went pick 6 or 7 to Chicago. And I told some NFL GMs, if you draft Lattimore, make sure you're not a high latitude team. Make sure you're low latitude team. I said, he's a black dude that's got a lot of tattoos, and he's not really dark. I said, Kevin White is dark like he's from Nairobi. I said, if high latitude drafts him, it ain't going to work. So hard stop. What happens? Kevin White gets drafted by the Bears. He never even gets on the field. Why? Because he gets these horrible shin splints in his feet. What did I just tell you? You think you're going to be able to ground in Chicago with shitty light and bad environment? No, it didn't matter. He looked like Adonis. You know, did great when he went to Indy. That's how he got picked 7. But guess what? When you put him in an environment that he's not going to thrive, it's equivalent to taking a guy who's like a coconut tree and putting him in Canada and thinking he's going to make coconuts. And he didn't. Now let's flip this around. Same draft. Same advice I gave about Lattimore, who went to school where? Ohio State, same latitude as Chicago. He gets drafted to the 28th latitude. And guess what he does? He's outside, because guess what? The Saints training facility is in Metairie, Louisiana, right next to the Mississippi River, outside. They got a bubble, but Sean Payton made everybody go outside. Guess what? Might he have heard about Dr. Kruse? Okay? So guess what? Lattimore becomes an all-pro cornerback. Never gets hurt when he's always hurt in Ohio State. So let me ask you a question. But you know both of these guys did everything the trainers did, right? But one stayed healthy and the other one didn't. Well, I want you to think about professional sports now this way. Think about a team like you and I talked about. Tennessee Titans have been more injured the last couple of years. Guess what they just did? They built a new training facility, and now they bring everybody inside. Guess what else they do? They're big into analytics now. Now they're using iPads. They're doing film. Think that might have anything to do with that? But the dude they just got rid of, biggest mistake, Derrick Henry, what did he do? Trains outside running on hills all the time. Sounds a little bit like Walter Payton. Or how about Jerry Rice? Remember those guys? Mm-hmm. You know, as a former NFL player, what I'm telling you, is these dudes did their own routine outside the team, outside. So guess what my message is to all of you? I don't really care about what you do. Just do me a favor. Try to do it outside and try to do it with no shoes on. Try to wear as less clothes as you can. If you've made bad decisions in your life, like getting tattoos on your body, you need more sun, not less. Okay? And guess the other part. If you want to be like Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady or Steve McNair, the more time you spend outside, the smarter you also get because it improves your frontal lobes. You're able to make decisions better. You're not going to jump off sides as much. You're not going to create holding penalties. You're going to have supreme control of your coracospinal spinal tract so your body moves way better than anybody else. Why? Because you're able to assimilate all the information in your environment and it gets transformed in your mitochondria and you start to become a Sherpa right on the field. And everybody looks at you like, bro, what did you do? And you say, well, I just got rid of my sunglasses. I got rid of my tattoos. I took my shirt off. I'm doing things. I'm not going out with my boys at night. I'm doing my training routine, but I'm doing it outside. I've changed a couple of things that are different. I'm not wearing shoes. And everybody's going to look at you in the beginning like you crazy. But guess what? When they see you on the field, they're going to go, bro, I need to start doing this. Why? Because those guys go from being one contract NFL players to 3 contract NFL players. The reason why Uncle Jack is real popular with elite athletes, because I tell them straight up, you want to make more money? Listen to me. And guess what? I just tell them, go talk to the other guys that listen to me. Because I'm going to tell you things nobody else is going to tell you. You have to optimize light, water, magnetism, because guess what that does? It informs the mechanics that take care of your engines how to do their job right. You become phenomenal. You will recover from injuries faster than anybody else. Want to hear a crazy story, Coop? Because I think this started right when you were in the league. When I told the story that I told you before we started about the use of red light in NFL training things, when that first came out, I was looked at as crazy. When I started telling people about how we use cold, that was crazy until LeBron and Wade started using it when they won their championships in Miami. People like trainers like, oh, you can't do that because we need the inflammation to improve your body. I'm like, bro, those guys are dumbasses. Don't listen to them. And guys now in the NFL and the NHL, every single training facility has red light beds in it. That wasn't true when you were in the league. Now everybody uses them. Why? Because they know that the science is called photobiomodulation. But guess what? I already told you. The sun has the best part of red light. All you got to do is get your skin in the game. That's it. Okay? So, like you see guys out there training now, like, or playing basketball. It always drives me crazy. They wear tights and all kinds of shit all over them. I'm like, no, when you're on the field, be as naked as you can. Now, it's hard to do in certain sports, but in other sports, it's not. Now, where I do want you covered completely is if your sport is completely indoor. And in the NFL, even compared to when you played, there's much more indoor time than outdoor time. So guess what? Playing on fake fields, playing inside, bro, those are all dangerous to your health. And now, NFL owners want you to go to 18 games. Do they have your best at mind? No, that means, guess what? The time that Coop, before camp, you need to be down here with Uncle Jack on the black sand beach and understand why a black sand beach is better than a white sand beach. You ever walk on a black sand beach? Really hot.
Real hot.
What that means? More free electrons coming off. So guess what? You're going to walk where the water meets that black sand, and that's where you're going to do most of your working out. And guess when else you want to do it? Right after the night before there was a storm, an electrical storm. When the lightning hits the black rock, there's more electrons in that area. Let me ask you a question, Coop. You still live in Florida? Where are you at now?
No, I live in Tennessee right now, but I'm originally from Florida.
Where in Tennessee? In Nashville?
Nashville, yeah.
Hey, tell me where there's a black sand beach in Nashville.
Nah, I don't think there is one.
Tell me where there's a white sand beach in Nashville.
There
I know
isn't
you're going to
one.
tell me Nashville Shores. I know.
I didn't even know about that. I don't know.
But the best place for you to be in Nashville, I'm going to tell you a story. When Steve McNair played for the Titans, you know what he used to do?
No.
Used to go out fishing all the time in the lakes out there with no shirt on all the time. Ask anybody who is in Nashville right now the stories about McNair. He literally would sleep before the game. He would hardly do any working out. And dude, he was the strongest guy on the team, pound for pound. But let me tell you something. Always outside. He would fish constantly, eat fish. And this is before camp. When he was down in Mississippi, the same thing. Brett Favre used to go, bro, I don't know how you do this. And you saw how beaten up he was. Nobody got beat up as more as McNair. And yet McNair still was able to play really well. And there's a story here that I'm trying to tell you. Like right now, professional athletes, they get injured way too much. Why? Because the training that they're being taught is not being done in the right environment. So even if you are screwed by your trainer, what I want to tell you as the athlete, when you do have your alone time, go do it your way. And I will tell you, I can tell you that's what Derrick Henry's doing. That's what a lot of the athletes are doing. But that's not what everybody does. And once you realize why you're doing this, to be an elite athlete in certain sports, not only you have to play with injury. You know that. Well, playing with injury makes it even worse. So that means you need your engines to be supreme. I mean, do you think the Sherpas want to go up and pick some guy from France up and carry him down? No, that's a huge stressor. But guess what? They can do it because these little people that are not even 140 pounds, they're all tan because they live at 20,000 latitude close to the UV light. And it's freezing cold. Didn't I tell you that about LeBron and Dwayne Wade? So guess what? Cold and UV light actually stimulate purple and red inside you, makes your engine stronger. And it turns out when you look at them, they have more strength and less muscle mass. That is absolutely where performance comes from. Why? Because they're controlling their skeletal muscle fiber type. They can do things that guys with more muscle can't even contemplate doing. And you know the reason why? Humans are not designed to put their mitochondria in their muscles. They're designed to be here in your heart. So guess what? This is why when you see a guy like Russell Okung, who did play when you played, you see him out of the NFL now, he looks like a skinny little guy now because he's lost all his muscle mass because he knows the more muscle mass you carry around, the less time you're going to live. That's the reason why all these other guys die. I'm telling you, part of the reason why Frank Wycheck, who played for the Titans with McNair, he's now dead. He's 52 years old. Not only from the concussions, but also the muscle mass that he carried around harmed him. Several of the guys that he played with that were offensive linemen did the same thing Russell Okung did. And they spent more time outside. Like you can do well after an NFL career if you understand some of the things that I'm trying to explain to you. Because an elite athlete, you may not be playing football, basketball, baseball, soccer, whatever. But afterwards, you still have to be an elite performer for your family, for your wife, for your kids, for your friends. And you need to realize that all this stuff that I teach people about the elite performance is actually good for their longevity too. And longevity for me means you have health span and you don't need a guy like me. You don't need a neurosurgeon. You don't need to have back surgery. You don't need to have neck surgery. You don't need to have a brain tumor taken out. You don't have diabetes. You don't develop obesity after your playing career is over. Why? Because you learned that you can sculpt your body using light, using water, using magnetism, and you don't have to just use the gym to do it like the trainers are telling you. That is the story of where elite begins.
I love it. But could you talk a little bit more about, the water aspect? Because, we're here in America where you get water out of the tap is trash, right?
Well, it's probably trash, but I will tell you, that's not the story of water that I want my athletes to know. It's a little bit more nuanced than that, and I'll explain it to you. I already told you the big story about the sun and the light. What people don't know is that water inside your body is created from mitochondria, from those engines. So I want to give you a quick lesson that I know you've heard, but probably nobody's explained it to you as simply as I can. The tree behind me makes oranges and food through a process called photosynthesis. I know you've heard that term. Photosynthesis is basically it consumes water, consumes carbon dioxide from the air, uses sunlight, and it creates food. Okay? What do your mitochondria do? It reverses that process. You eat the food and it turns it into carbon dioxide and water. Hard stop. Is the water that the plants consume the same as the water the mitochondria makes? The answer is no. The water that the plant consumes is tied to the hydrology cycle that's related to the tap water that's there. Plants can use that, okay? But us, we create a special type of water that has a special chemical formula. Most people have learned that water is H2O. Most people know that the H is hydrogen, the O is oxygen. So there's 2 hydrogens for every oxygen. Turns out in a plant, we have another of hydrogen called deuterium. And it turns out plants can deal with that, but we can't. And what does that mean when it comes to water? Okay? I'll tell you exactly what it means. Deuterium has an extra neutron on it. So that means it's double the atomic weight. Remember the story I just told you about offensive linemen that are really, real big? Turns out the more mass you got, the less energy efficient you can be. So what's the goal of the elite athlete? You want to make sure that your engines only make deuterium-depleted water. How do you do that? You do it, the sun naturally deuterium depletes you. How do you get rid of deuterium if you're an elite athlete? Okay? You sweat. Your skin cells come off. Like I have all my athletes use loofah brushes. Loofah brushes like that thing to get rid of all the dead skin. Why? Because it's loaded with deuterium. You want to take it all off? So you stimulate it. When you take a dump every day, it should be routine right after you eat, probably within an hour, if your circadian clock genes are working. In your poop is deuterium. And you want to be real regular about getting rid of it, okay? Those are the major ways that you get rid of it. But when I get an elite athlete who wants to get another level, I tell them I want you to drink high latitude water. Turns out where the water is different on Earth, closer to the poles, the water has less deuterium in it. At the equator, it's got higher levels. So let's say you're Messi, okay? And you're playing for Argentina. Argentina is in the southern hemisphere really low. And he just played, I think, Colombia last night in a Copa final. If you want to be able to play that game and go 2 overtimes and be the best guy on the field, maybe you drink water that comes from high latitude Norway, and you don't drink the stuff that the trainers give you. Now, why am I telling you this to you? You'll be very shocked to hear this because you're out of the league now. But I've told every NFL trainer that every NFL player, especially if they have a concussion history or PTSD, needs to be drinking deuterium-depleted water. Did you know that the U.S. military started to use reverse osmosis deuterium-depleted water for the soldiers in the field? Why? Because it reduced the amount of PTSD they had coming back. Turns out the water you actually can affect your performance. So what I just told you, when you understand what deuterium-depleted water is, it's almost like what Lance Armstrong did, blood doping, except it's legal. Why? Because nobody can test for this, okay? So all the athletes that were forced to take the jab, I tell all of them, you want to avoid what happened to DeMar Hamlin and J.J. Watt? Make sure you drink deuterium-depleted water and get in the sun. Because the more electric charge you got on your membranes, the less chance that jab's going to be able to do things to you to hurt you. And remember, the jab was them taking some of your energy and your transformation abilities in your machines away from you. So you got to add it back. You got to understand how to do that. You change your training routine of running on, firm land and do grounding, not in an area that's got power lines below it. But that's why I'm a big fan of the beach. Do it there. Like in your case, since you're in Nashville, I would tell you, go up to Old Hickory Lake, up there. There's a place pretty close to, I think it's Mount Juliet, that actually has sand in the lake. That's exactly where I would go. I can tell you that's where McNair went to do a lot of his fishing. Okay? Do unusual things to get unusual performance. And you will be surprised at the places you can get it. So deuterium-depleted water is easy. You can now buy it. Back when you were playing, it was harder. When, Reggie White and all those guys played, it was almost impossible to get. But did they get told about it? Yeah. Those guys made a lot of money, so it was easy for them to bring that water in from Romania because that's where it actually came from. Those were the people that were making it. Do you know that every single team in Russia and in Eastern Bloc countries, this is when you were a little boy, do Do you know why they used to kick our ass in the Olympics? These dudes are all drinking deuterium-depleted water. Nobody even knew about it in the United States. Nobody. None of the trainers. Still to this day, it's still untapped for elite athletes. But I can tell you, Tom Brady does it. Aaron Rodgers does it. I can tell you that Drew Brees use that and photobiomodulation when he tore his ligament and came back in 5 weeks at the end of his career. Like, there's things you can do if you understand how the decentralized networks that are in you that come from nature work with nature. Like, you need to plug into nature. And the more you plug into nature, I don't care what your routine is, you will be a better athlete.
Man, I don't even think I have any more questions for you, Uncle Jack, because you set it all in stone for like what like I need to do for myself only going forward, but also all the athletes and coaches out there going forward that are listening to this.
I'm going to tell you one thing, Coop. I'm going to tell you one thing that I do think that I think some people will listen to this and say, bro, I got to question everything. This could be total wackadoodle stuff. So this is what I would tell you. I want you to go read a book, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The book that I want you to read, it's an old book. It's written by an orthopedic surgeon. His name is Dr. Robert O. Becker. The name of the book is called The Electric Body. What I just described to you in your podcast is how this electric body works. For people to understand why this stuff works, why I've been teaching this for 20 years to my athletes, you need to see some of the science. And when you see some of the science for yourself, because this book is pretty easy to read, you're going to sit back in the chair and go, bro, why isn't everybody being told this? What is the reason for that? Because remember, the game that trainers and gym owners are in, it's a centralized deal. What I'm trying to teach people is being decentralized, meaning that there's no central control. The two controls that control all the things in your body are the light and dark cycles. You need to have supreme control of light and dark in your life, and everything else will fall into place. You know, and for those athletes listening to this, I'm going to tell you, show you how simple it is. Michael Phelps was around when Usain Bolt was there. Everybody knows he started smoking weed and he fell apart after his career was over. You know why? Because he was swimming indoors in a chlorine-filled pool. Chlorine is really no good for you. Guess what? The stuff that you said, the water out of a tap ain't no good. Every time you take a shower in Nashville, I got some bad news for you. It's chlorinated water.
No.
Okay? How are you going to solve that problem? I'm going to tell you. See the pool behind me? Ain't got any chlorine in it. Well, guess what? Maybe you got enough money. You say, I'm just going to start taking my showers in my pool because I can't trust the water there. Or in Nashville, what you could also do is I'm going to drill a well at my property and do that. Several of the Titans actually did that and had their own well. Why? Because then they could get off city water. It's kind of like the same argument I make to people. Don't send your children to public schools, because in public schools, they get centralized ideas by the government put in their head, and they think that's the way it should go. Well, I'm telling you, the same thing is true with the water you drink or the water you take a shower in. Go build a well. That's kind of like homeschooling your kids. Well, homeschool your water. Go get a well. I want you to homeschool your light. Go get the sun. I want you to homeschool all the magnetic chemistry in your body. Even if you don't know shit about free radicals, all I need you to do is take your shoes off and ground while you're doing your workouts or you're doing regular life with your family. That's all I need you to do. It ain't that hard. Okay? I always tell my athletes, if you think it's what I'm telling you is really, really hard, I want you to go on the internet and find a picture of the Sphinx. Y'all know that the Sphinx has been around for between 2,500 and 5,000 years. Why is it that the Egyptians, whose god was called Ra, the sun, right, put this huge statue in the Sahara Desert with the eyes looking to the east and all four extremities on the ground? Maybe this story I'm trying to tell you, this ain't new world bullshit. Maybe it's old world wisdom that the new world bullshit artists are trying to keep you from. Okay? That's the real story. So that you don't have a short career. You don't end up like Reggie White. You don't end up like Junior Seau. I want you not only to be high performance athletes, but I want you to be better people after you retire. I want you to be healthy, and I want you to stay away from the centralized shills in my profession who think making you bionic man and putting fake hips and and joints and everything else on you. And doing that is a good thing. This is also the reason why you see guys that have surgeries in the NFL. They never stay the same player. If you don't believe me, think about Darius Leonard. Perfect example, right? And where did he play? Indianapolis. That inside or outside? There you go. So just remember, there's a story there, my friend. And you may not see the story, and that's okay. Hopefully, you'll remember this podcast. You go read that book, and when you realize what I'm telling you is some ancient wisdom. Photonics and electronics over modern bullshit. Okay? That's all you got to do. Bring some of the old school to the new school, and then I think you work on your craft and realize when you do your studying, improve your frontal lobes, everything gets better. When you start filling all that purple and red light into your system, I call that redox potential. I call that building up your net negative charge in your body. It's no different than when, say, you're in Nashville and it's January 6th and your F-250 doesn't start. You call AAA and they jump it. What this podcast I'm doing with you, Coop, I'm AAA. And you got the dead battery. And now you're like, bro, I got it. I know what I got to do. And anybody who's a non-believer, you go read that book and say, Dr. Kruse is not joking around here. This stuff has been known for a long time, but for some reason it ain't filtering through to us, okay? Because remember, the teams, they want to control your regimen, okay? But you say, that's fine, you can control the regimen, but you're going to do it my way in my environment. If you ain't doing that, sorry, bro, because guess what? My cash is connected to my performance, and my health is also connected to my cash, because if I'm not healthy, I ain't making the cash. That's how this goes. Remember, those teams hold that against you. So guess what? You need to turn this whole thing around. That's why I'm a bad man for professional sports teams.
You're a great man for us athletes.
Right, because guess what? This is what decentralized medicine is, Coop. There's no middleman between me and you. Like, I can sit here and talk to you. Like, you go to the hospital in Nashville. Like, say you go to Vanderbilt. You got hospital administrators and insurance companies between me and you telling us how I should treat you. Well, no, bro, you need to hear from me. Then you got to decide, am I crazy? Or, you know what? I'm going to give crazy a chance because I did it Vanderbilt's way the whole time. I didn't get any better. So I'm going to give crazy a chance. I'm going to go out in the lake, take my shirt off. I don't know how to fish, but I can go to Bass Outlet Mall and figure out, get me a pole and go out and eat the fish I catch, drink the deuterium-depleted water. And when I go on vacation next time, I'm going to find a place that's got a lake inside a volcano. I'm going to hang out there for 4 or 5 months and do my workout there. And guess what you magically find? That's where you're going to find Larry Fitzgerald. That's where you're going to find Usain Bolt. That's where you're going to find James Harrison. Bro, that's where it is. You can have what you want, but it's no longer survival of the fittest. It's survival of the wisest. What I'm giving you here, it's the wisdom, bro. It's the ancients. It's those old wrestlers back in the day. It's the Sphinx. Don't forget that Sphinx. Look to the east every morning. Connected to the ground. Then get your day going. Then do what you got to do.
Appreciate that, Uncle Jack. I'm definitely taking a lot of this, and I'm going to read that book. I don't care what people say about the crazies or not believing in it yet, because there's something to be said about what has been done before and how it can be applied now. You know, we can get away from all those surgeries and all the stuff that the doctors are telling us to do, because we've seen that it hasn't worked. Me being a former athlete, you know, kind of going into, you know, having knee problems, ankle problems, even a finger now, and they're all telling me I need to get surgeries. I'm against it all because I don't want to go through it. You know,
right.
I don't want to be cut on. I don't want to have to take all the medications and everything afterwards. So now I'm looking for what is it I can do to help the body be better now that I'm done playing.
No, I'm telling you, this is what you do. You do this before you opt for all the surgeries, and you'll magically find out that things that somebody else tells you can't be fixed, you magically find out that it can be. And then you start asking the question, well, why aren't they telling me that? Because that ruins their business model. Okay? And that's the same reason why gym owners don't allow the sun in. You know, it's expensive to allow the sun in because you got to alter your building that's there. And when you don't realize it's the biggest part of the training game, bro, you're apt to make huge mistakes. And you need to be connected to the ground. Well, every place that you go, in any gym, it's almost always concrete and it's got wires in the foundation and this, that. Bro, it's almost like you're training in Chernobyl and think you're going to be an elite athlete. I mean, it's the craziest set of circumstances ever. And that's why this is so easy, because if I can get you to, what the old time athletes used to do working outside, I'm not kidding you. I don't care what type of athlete you are, your performance will improve. And it's not going to just improve your musculoskeletal system, but it's really going to improve your neurologic system. And people forget that all movement comes from your brain. That's the corticospinal tract. So if I can bury more electricity and more magnetic flux in your corticospinal tract, bro, you have total control of your system. You become way better as an athlete, and you can actually improve as you get older. Even though everybody tells you as you get older, your performance drops, you can extend this out. I mean, I can tell you, Patrick Peterson, a guy that had diabetes when he came into the league, it's now, I think, year 14, 15. He does almost everything I do. Tom Brady's another one. I'm using football because you told me you're a football guy. I want people to understand it's not just about football. It's about swimming. It's about wrestling. It's about soccer. It's about golf. I mean, look at Tiger Woods. Perfect example of how to fuck up a career. Did everything possibly wrong you could do wrong. But guess what? In the beginning, he was pretty amazing. But he got away from what made him amazing. And it wasn't this or that. He had injuries. He started going out and drinking, drugging, chasing ass. Bro, all that stuff got him into trouble. And that's the reason why he's not going to break Jack Nicklaus's record. And that's a shame, because he was probably one of the best athletes I've ever seen. And somebody asked me this the other day, and I'm going to tell you, probably the second thing you probably do after you read that book. The best athlete in the world, do you know who it was? My opinion? Secretariat. A horse. What do you know about horses? They run outside all the time, right?
Yeah.
Do me a favor. Go pull up on YouTube the 1973 Belmont Stakes. You tell me any other athlete in the biggest game of its life that had a better performance. And I'm including Jerry Rice's best games, Joe Montana's best games. Okay? No one, not Michael Jordan, not Shaq, no one outproduced on that single day what that horse was able to do. And just remember, when you look at that horse and you see what happened in the Belmont and what happened to the competition, remember the time of year that races run, what that horse was running on, and what's on that horse, and how did that horse train. Well, guess what I'm telling your guys? I want you to be Secretariat. More like Secretariat and less like you are. Because guess what? If the horse can do it, so can you. Because guess what? You're a way more complicated mammal, but you work better in the same thermodynamics that horse did in 1973.
Uncle Jack, I appreciate you coming on here and definitely opening a lot of eyes and opening up a lot of minds, and learning a lot from you today. I'm definitely going to be reaching out to you again soon for some more information, but we'll cut it here for the day. And thank you so much for your time.
No problem. Nice talking to you, Coop.
Thank you. And we're out.
Get outside.
Yes.